Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. What a special day it is. It is the disappearance of Srila Haridas Thakur. It's a very, very special day today. So, and on this wonderful day, so we will be hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So this will be continuation of our discussion from this previous chapter. We completed chapter 9 of 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the exalted character of Jada Bharat. We are continue to read the story, the pastime of Bharat Maharaj, King Bharat. So today we will be doing chapter 10. And chapter 10 is like how Jada Bharat meets King Rahugana. So the discussion between Jada Bharat and Maharaj Rahugana. Okay, so over to you, Sundar Chaitanya.
Yes, just give me 1 second.
Sure.
I just closed the Veda-based tab.
Okay. Shall I bring the screen up or?
I've got it here.
Okay.
I'm just gonna. So we're just going to read the translations. Yeah, you already summarized, so I will not summarize again. The last chapter we saw the character of Jada Bharat. Can you give me the screen sharing rights?
Done.
Perfect. Thank you. So. Yes, that's okay. Okay. So can we have a volunteer to read from verses 1 till verse 8? Verse 1 to verse 8. Everyone seems to be sleeping.
No, can I read, Prabhuji?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. We're more than happy, Mataji. We're begging for volunteers.
Thank you. So is it from text 1 to text 8, Prabhuji?
Yes, translations, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Text 1. Shukadeva Goswami continued, my king, after this king, Rahugana, ruler of the states known as Sindhu and Sauvira, was going to Kapilashrama. When the king's chief palanquin carrier reached the banks of the river Iksumati, they needed another carrier. Therefore, they began searching for someone, and by chance they came upon Jada Bharat. They considered the fact that Jada Bharat was very young and strong and had firm limbs. Like cows and asses, he was quite fit to carry loads. Thinking in this way, although the great soul Jada Bharat was unfit for such work, they nonetheless unhesitatingly forced him to carry the palanquin. The palanquin, however, was very erratically carried by Jada Bharat due to his sense of non-violence. As he stepped forward, he checked before him every 3 feet to see whether he was about to step on ants. Consequently, he could not keep pace with the other carriers. Due to this, the palanquin was shaking, and King Rahugana immediately asked the carriers, why are you carrying this palanquin unevenly? Better carry it properly. When the palanquin carriers heard the threatening words of Maharaja Rahugana, they became very afraid of his punishment and began to speak to him as follows. O Lord, please note that we are not at all negligent in discharging our duties. We have been faithfully carrying this palanquin according to your desire, but this man, who has been recently engaged to work with us, cannot walk very swiftly. Therefore, we are not able to carry the palanquin with him. King Rahugana could understand the speeches given by the carriers who were afraid of being punished. He could also understand that simply due to the fault of one person, the palanquin was not being carried properly. Knowing this perfectly well and hearing their appeal, he became a little angry. Although he was very advanced in political science and was very experienced, his anger arose due to his inborn nature as a king. Actually, King Rahugana's mind was covered by mode of passion, and he therefore spoke as follows to Jadabharat, whose Brahman effulgence was not clearly visible because being covered like a fire being covered by ashes. King Rahugana told Jadabharat, how troublesome this is, my dear brother. You certainly appear very fatigued because you have carried this palanquin alone without assistance for a long time and for a long distance. Besides that, due to your old age, you have become greatly troubled. My dear friend, I see that you are not very firm, not very strong and stout. Aren't your fellow carriers cooperating with you? Text 7. Therefore, thereafter, when the king saw that his palanquin was still being shaken by the carriers, he became very angry and said, You rascal, what are you doing? Are you dead despite the life within your body? Do you not know that I am your master? You are disregarding me and not carrying out my order. For this obedience, I shall now punish you just as Yamaraja, the superintendent of death, punishes sinful people. I shall give you proper treatment so that you will come to your senses and do the correct thing. Text 8. Thinking himself a king, King Rahugana was in the bodily conception and was influenced by material nature's modes of passion and ignorance. Due to madness, he chastised Jadabharat with uncalled for and contradictory words. Jadabharat was a topmost devotee and the dear abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although considering himself very learned, the king did not know about the position of an advanced devotee situated in devotional service, nor did he know his characteristics. Jadabharat was the residence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He always carried the form of the Lord within his heart. He was a dear friend of all living beings, and he did not entertain any bodily conception. He therefore smiled and spoke the following words. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you very much, Mataji. So I think before we do an in-depth analysis, I think we should take a quick trip down memory lane. In the 8th chapter of this canto, Bharat Maharaj went to Palashrama after giving up the kingdom, as easily as one gives up stool, he gave up the kingdom very easily. He went there to meditate on Lord Vishnu. Becoming distracted and becoming attached to the deer, he unfortunately lost his body in thought of the deer and ended up taking the deer's body. But because of his high sadhana, he was able to remember that this is his actual mission and this is how he made a mistake. So in that deer body, he carried out very good sadhana and was able to elevate himself so that after he left in the deer body, he was born in the born in the lineage of Brahmanas. And recollecting his previous 2 births, he acted like a deaf, dull, dumb man who would always do things opposite to how they should be done, because he was already realized in the absolute truth. He could see Paramatma everywhere. And his father tried to train him. After his father died, his brothers neglected him and they tried to use him as a scarecrow. And then the dacoits one day, trying to carry out a self-concocted man sacrifice to Mother Durga, take Jadabharat and try to kill him. And he does not respond, he does not do anything. And Mother Durga comes out from the deity form and kills her own followers in order to protect Jadabharat because he's a devotee. And so that's where we finished. Now, this chapter, what we are seeing is the discussion that happens afterwards when Bharat Maharaj, as the king is going on a palanquin and he's in need of someone to hold the palanquin. And so when they're going past, they see Jadabharat and he looks very strong. And so they request him to also help in moving the palanquin. And he complies, he doesn't say anything. but he was not carrying it properly. He was carrying it quite erratically. And the reason for this, we'll see now, is because, screenshot's loading. Yeah. The reason for this is because before he stepped forward, he checked before him every 3 feet to see whether he was about to step on ants. The saintly personalities, they are very careful. They are very attentive to the details so that they are merciful and they are in line with the religious injunctions. And so he was checking and making sure that he does not inflict any harm upon the other living entities. So if we could have someone to read out this purport, which is very, very nice, we'll be able to understand more lessons from this section.
Bhuvaneshwari Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Although
Jai.
Jat Bharat was forced to carry the palanquin, he did not give up his sympathetic feelings towards the poor ants passing on the road. A devotee of the Lord does not forget his devotional service and other favorable activities, even when he is in a most distressful condition. Jat Bharat was a qualified Brahmana, highly elevated in spiritual knowledge, yet he was forced to carry the palanquin. He did not mind this, but while walking on the road, he could not forget his duty to avoid killing even an ant. A Vaishnava is never envious or unnecessarily violent. There were many ants on the path, but Jat Bharat took care by looking ahead 3 feet. When the ants were no longer in his way, he would place his foot on the ground. A Vaishnava is always very kind at heart to all living entities. In his Sankhya Yoga, Lord Kapil Dev explains, Suhrda Sarva Dehi Nam. Living entities assume different bodily forms. Those who are not Vaishnavas consider only human society worthy of their sympathy. But Krishna claims to be the supreme father of all life forms. Consequently, the Vaishnava takes care not to annihilate untimely or unnecessarily any life form. All living entities have to fulfill a certain duration for being engaged in a particular type of material body. They have to finish the duration allotted a particular body before being promoted or evolved to another body. Killing an animal or any other living being simply places an impediment in the way of his completing his sum of imprisonment in a certain body. One should therefore not kill bodies for one's sense gratification, for this will implicate one in sinful activity. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mataji. So the first thing that was very clear that you see here is that just because a devotee of the Lord is absorbed in devotion does not mean that he's neglectful for the other living entities. And a Vaishnava is never envious or unnecessarily violent. Okay, keep the word unnecessarily in mind, because some people, whenever they always say, oh, why Arjun was told to fight. Unnecessarily violent. Violence is not the main resort. It's only used as a final resort. And the Vaishnava should be very careful, not just in taking care of the humans, but also taking care of all life forms. Over here it says, all life forms. And so the Vaishnavas do not therefore purposefully or knowingly cause harm to other living entities, regardless of the body that they are in. And Prabhupada then goes on to explain that animals should not be killed for the mere sense gratification of the living entity. And you can see that the current culture of the society is that there is no harm in doing anything for one sense gratification. But this is not at all what the mood of the Vaishnava is. And so Jada Bharat, he was moving in a very sporadic way, because he was just like jumping over, trying to avoid standing on any ants. And this is how attentive the Vaishnava is when it comes to being careful in the dealings with all.
It also reflects the consciousness of that person, right?
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So based on your consciousness, you act in certain way. So based on this, we can understand the consciousness of Jada Bharat. That how he was able to see Krishna everywhere, And that's why, we walk on the street, not sure how many times we were jumping or like, something like that.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
Mrugari's story also.
I was thinking of the same thing. Yeah. So Mrugari's story is mentioned where he used to, at the beginning, he was half killing animals in order to cause pain, and he used to get a lot of pleasure from increasing the amount of pain they felt. But by the mercy of Narad Muni, he had come to a point where when he saw Narad Muni, he was also running in a crazy manner. Narad Muni said, "What happened?" And he was saying, "No, I'm sweeping away these ants here because I don't want to stand on them." So in that way, the living entity is always very, very careful of the spiritual person is always very careful of the interactions with all living entities. The point I also wanted to mention here is that the devotee of the Lord does not forget his devotional service or other favorable activities, even when he's in the most distressful condition. Now, if we reflect on our own lives, we might be the opposite. We may forget even when there is no distress. But the devotee is such that the devotee does not forget even in the most distressful situation. And you can always see that those people who have taken that difficulty and walked on the path of devotional service through the difficult time, you can see always the kind of result they gain. And if you look at every pure devotee, you can do your own analysis. Prahlad Maharaj, Hiranyakashipu caused problems. He could have said, "Yes, Father, you are God," but he never said that, because he knew, no, you're not God. You're claiming to be God. The source of your strength and my strength are the same. And when you see Vibhishan, he could have easily said to Ravan, "Yeah, it's okay. You did your Sita is fine, no problem." But what does he say? "No, I will not support you," and he leaves as apparently looking like a traitor. So although it's difficult, he can carry on. And of course, Yudhishthir Maharaj, who also carried out the difficulty, but in order to carry on the correct path of devotional service. And so this is the mood of the devotee. So not compromise in this regard, even in the most distressful situation, on the values of devotional service.
Even in the life of Prabhupada, we are reading Prabhupada Leelamrita in the morning every day. And we see that how many challenges that Prabhupada had been through, but he had never forgotten the instruction he was given by spiritual master to to propagate this Krishna consciousness, especially to English speaking world. So he had never forgotten so many challenges.
Yeah, Srila Prabhupada. I mean, you can do that analysis. Everyone can sit there and do pure devotee. Do they have this quality? And you'll see that they all have this quality.
Yeah.
And this is the the main 2 points from this purport, which are very nice. Suhridam sarvadehinam, friendly to all living entities, and not compromising on the principles even in difficult circumstances, in order to, again, with that sensitivity for all living entities. The other thing that I wanted to read in this regard was the purport to number 6. So Rahugana, he chastises, that you should not be doing like this. Then the other servants, the other 3 people carrying the palanquin, they say, "Oh, no, we're not doing, it's a little difficult. There is a new person that's been engaged and he's not experienced yet. He's not going quick enough." And Prabhupada actually writes here, I'm not going to read out the full purport, but Prabhupada writes here that, these other personalities, they were Shudras, and a Vaishnava cannot act like a Shudra. So when a Shudra and a Brahmana Vaishnava are combined, there will be an imbalance in the execution of duties, because they do differently. The Shudras are not thinking, "Oh, we should not step on every ant." And so then basically they blame him while covering their backs, just to be safe, naturally. And Rahugana then, he, although aware of the political science, he became very angry on Jadabharat. So generally in the political science, you should be quite in control of your emotions. Sometimes you should use anger to correct. Sometimes you should use encouragement to correct. And although he was experienced in that, he became very angry because of the mode of passion. The word Raja, king, actually comes from Rajoguna, from mode of passion, because king is very much in the mode of passion. And so because he was in the mode of passion, he became extremely angry. There's also another verse in the Gita which shows that the link to the mode of passion, the lust and anger coming from the mode of passion. And because he was so much in mode of passion, he became angry and he spoke very harsh words to Jadabharat in a sarcastic manner, in a very rude manner. He said, you certainly appear very fatigued because you're carried the palanquin alone. Yeah, he's saying, okay, first thing is you already have people there. What's your problem? The second thing is for a long time and long distance. You've only done for short distance, for short period of time, and you're causing so many problems. Okay, so you're not actually fatigued. Then the next thing is that because of your old age, you have become greatly troubled. So he's then again being sarcastic. He's quite young, you're quite young, and you're still causing problems. So you cannot blame the age. And he says that I see that you're not very firm nor strong. In other words, although Bharat Maharaj's Jadabharat is very strong, he's then making sarcasm from that. And he's saying that the other carriers are not cooperating with him. So in this way, he's sarcastically trying to tease him. So you can see that this is what happens because of the anger. He is now just trying to insult and trying to provoke Jadabharat here. And then he becomes even more angry and he calls him a rascal. What are you doing? Are you dead despite the life within your body? Do you not know I'm your master? For this disobedience, I shall now punish you like Yamaraj does. So in this way, he's very, very heavy on Jadabharat. And this sarcasm and anger combines for this very, unnecessarily harsh words which he uses. And this is the purport I wanted to read, yes, verse 8. Okay, can we have a volunteer to read?
Haribol, can I read, please, Prabhuji?
Ivy, Haribol.
Yes, 1 second, I'm just trying to make it big enough. Yeah, please go ahead.
The distinction between a person in the bodily conception and a person beyond the bodily conception is presented in this verse. In the bodily conception, King Rahugana considered himself a king and chastised Jadabharat in so many unwanted ways. Being self-realized, Jadabharat, who was fully situated on the transcendental platform, did not at all become angry. Instead, he smiled and began to deliver his teachings to King Rahugana. A highly advanced Vaishnava devotee is a friend to all living entities, and consequently is a friend to his enemies also. In fact, he does not consider anyone to be his enemy. Surda Sarvadehinam. Sometimes a Vaishnava becomes superficially angry at a non-devotee, but this is good for the non-devotee. We have several examples of this in Vedic literature. Once Narada became angry with the two sons of Kuver, Nalakuvar and Manigriva, and he chastised them by turning them into trees. The result was that later they were liberated. Can you please scroll up?
Yeah.
They were liberated by Lord Shri Krishna. The devotee is situated on the absolute platform, and when he is angry or pleased, there is no difference, for in either case he bestows his benediction.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the very nice reading. So yes, this Suhridam Sarvadehinam concept of being merciful to all living entities, Jadabharat, although he's criticized by Rahugana in such harsh words, he is so peaceful. And he then replies in a very, happy tone, because he doesn't see this as a problem. And so actually here, you'll see a complete dichotomy between the materialist and the spiritualist. So Rahugana here in the mode of passion is the materialist, and Jadabharat here in the absorption of the spiritual life is the spiritualist. So you see, Rahugana, he became so irritated by a very small thing. And Jadabharat, although a most provoking situation is there, he does not become irritated. Okay? The first difference. So one is that material person becomes agitated regardless of the situation, and spiritual person is not agitated regardless of the situation. The second thing is the materialist, he always, whenever the outcome of his situation is always some problem is caused. Okay, he either creates bondage for himself or creates bondage or painful for others as well. But when the spiritualist acts, then the spiritualist always acts on the absolute platform and the service of the Lord, and therefore whether he acts sometimes out of anger and sometimes gently, he acts by bestowing benedictions upon the non-devotees. So whereas the materialist by the actions binds to the material life, the spiritualist liberates one from material life by the actions. So you can see a sheer contrast, a complete dichotomy between the two here. And you can just imagine sometimes when people speak to us with very harsh words, how angry we become. And Jada Bharat has been criticized with such, I mean, there is a description in Shastra, Chanakya writes, that the worst kind of insulting someone is through sarcasm. And you also may have seen this in your life. If you say someone you're stupid, they feel upset. But if you say, oh, you're so smart, when someone is stupid, they feel the most upset. And you would have seen this also in your own life. So this is the kind of harshest way of insulting someone. But because he's a devotee, he does not become agitated at all. So this is the difference between the spiritual platform and the material platform. And this is why we should aim for that spiritual platform through the process of devotional service. And that's what we'll see coming up in the next verses. Do you have anything you want to add in this regard?
Yes, Prabhupada mentioned sometimes the Vaishnavas can also be superficially angry. Yes, and he gives the example of Narada Muni cursing Nalakuver and Manigriva.
The Damodar leader.
Yeah, so it is ultimately for their benefit. Narada Muni acted in that way. So Prabhupada is giving that. Sometimes, yes, Guru also chastises. Prabhupada says, chant 16 rounds. It looks like a punishment for us. Follow 4 regulative principles. Oh my God, punishment. It looks like a punishment. But ultimately, it is for our benefit. So I thought I would mention that point.
No, that's a really nice point. Yeah. It's always for our benefit. We sometimes don't see it that way. Okay, so this is verses 1 to 8, where Rahugana offends Jada Bharat. Now we need someone as a volunteer to read verses 9 till 15, where we see Jada Bharat's reply to Maharaj Rahugana. This is quite a big moment for us because we have not heard Jada Bharat speak so far, actually. So in the Bhagavatam, this is after 2 chapters. Now we are finally coming in the 3rd chapter. He's speaking. Do we have any volunteer? Verses 9 till verse 15. Translations.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Should I do it?
Okay, you can do it. Then Arya can do later on. Yeah, thank you, Arya.
Yeah, go for it.
The great Brahmana Jada Bharat said, "My dear king and hero, whatever you have spoken sarcastically is certainly true. Actually, these are not simply words of chastisement, for the body is the carrier. The load carried by the body does not belong to me, for I am the spirit soul. There is no contradiction in your statements, because I am different from the body. I am not the carrier of the palanquin, the body is the carrier. Certainly, as you have hinted, I am not labored carrying the palanquin, for I am detached from the body. You have said that I am not stout and strong, and these words are befitting a person who does not know the distinction between the body and the soul. The body may be fat or thin, but no learned man would say such things of the spirit soul. As far as the spirit soul is concerned, I am neither fat nor skinny. Therefore, you are correct when you say that I am very stout. Also, if the object of this journey and the path leading there were mine, there would be many troubles for me. But because they relate not to me, but to my body, there is no trouble at all. Fatness, thinness, bodily and mental distress, thirst, hunger, fear, disagreement, desires for material happiness, old age, sleep, attachment for material possessions, anger, lamentation, illusion and identification of the body with the self are all transformations of the material covering and spirit soul. A person absorbed in the material bodily conception is affected by these things, but I am free from all bodily conceptions. Consequently, I am neither fat nor skinny, nor anything else you have mentioned. My dear king, you have unnecessarily accused me of being dead, though alive. In this regard, I can only say that this is the case everywhere, because everything material has its beginning and end. As far as you are thinking that you are the king and master and others trying to order me, this is also incorrect, because these positions are temporary. Today you are a king and I am your servant, but tomorrow the position may be changed, and you may be my servant and I your master. These are temporary circumstances created by providence. My dear king, if you still think that you are the king and that I am your servant, you should order me and I should follow your order. I can then say that this differentiation is temporary, and it expands only from the usage or convention. I do not see any other cause. In that case, who is the master and who is the servant? Everyone is being forced by the laws of material nature. Therefore, no one is the master and no one is the servant. Nonetheless, if you think that you are the master and I am the servant, I shall accept this. What can I do for you?
Please order.
Please order me. What can I do for you? My dear king, you have said, you rascal, you dull, crazy fellow, I'm going to chastise you and then you will come to your senses. In this regard, let me say that although I live like a dull, deaf and dumb man, I'm actually a self-realized person. What will you gain by punishing me? If your calculation is true and I am a madman, then your punishment will be like beating a dead horse. There will be no effect. When a madman is punished, he is not cured of his madness. Shukadeva Goswami said, O Maharaj Parikshit, when King Rahugana chastised the exalted devotee Jadabharat with harsh words, that peaceful saintly person tolerated it all and replied properly. Nascence is due to the bodily conception, and Jadabharat was not affected by this false conception. Out of his natural humility, he never considered himself a great devotee, and he agreed to suffer the results of his past karma. Like an ordinary man, he thought that by carrying the palanquin, he was destroying the reactions of his past misdeeds. Thinking in this way, he began to carry the palanquin as before. Shukadeva Goswami continued, O best of the Pandu dynasty, Maharaj Parikshit, the king of the Sindhu and Sauvira states, Maharaja Rahugana, had great faith in discussions of the absolute truth. Being thus qualified, he heard from Jadabharat that philosophical presentation, which is approved by all scriptures on the mystic yoga process and which slackens the knot in the heart. His material conception of himself as a king was thus destroyed. He immediately descended from his palanquin and fell flat on the ground with his head at the lotus feet of Lord Jadabharat in a way that he might be in such a way that he might be excused for his insulting words against the great Brahmana. He then prayed as follows.
Thank you. Very nice reading. So, verses 9 till 15, now Jadabharat is replying one by one to Rahugana's sarcastic and chastisement points. So the first thing he says is the reply to the comment that he's fatigued. So he's saying that I'm not fatigued because I'm not carrying the palanquin. The body is carrying the palanquin, and I am not the body, I'm the spirit soul. And the whole of this section, if you had to summarize all these verses to one point, it's just a recognition of the most basic. We say basic, it sometimes seems elementary, but it's not elementary, it's fundamental, right? It's fundamental. Like, even before you consider the identity of the Supreme, one should understand my own identity, right? Before we consider the existence of God, we should understand our own existence as being the spirit soul, not this body. And this is your ABCs of Krishna consciousness, is the most important principle. And Jada Bharat, having forgotten this principle, thinking himself to be king, himself to be master, had insulted, Maharaj Rahugana, forgetting this principle, had insulted Jada Bharat. And Jada Bharat is responding simply in a very calm, cool manner with recognition of this basic principle, that we are not the body, we're the spirit soul. And in this way, he's completely detached. So he says, I'm not fatigued because the body is carrying the palanquin and not me. And then coming to the point that about not being stout and strong, he says that, this fatness, the thinness, and all these other things, they only exist for the body, but the body is actually not the real identity of the individual. The real identity is the spirit soul. And as far as the spirit soul is concerned, there is neither fat nor skinny. So therefore, you are correct in saying that I'm not very stout. And in this way, he's explaining, where is it here? Yeah, fatness, thinness, bodily and mental distress, thirst, hunger, fear, disagreement, desires for material happiness, old age, sleep, attachment for material possessions, anger, lamentation, illusion, and identification with the body of the body with the self, are all transformations of the material covering of the spirit soul. And so, in other words, because the spirit soul, although spiritual, is in contact with Maya, then all these kind of ideas arise. This person is fat, this person is skinny, this person is beautiful, this person is ugly, this person is intelligent, this person is not. In this way, these kind of ideas arise. But actually, they don't exist, because this is all on the bodily platform. And the bodily platform of identification is not I shouldn't say not real, not permanent. It's not complete. And we'll come on to that point later. But it's complete illusion. And therefore, one who is actually intelligent will understand that they are neither any of, fat nor skinny, or any of these dualities mentioned above. And in this regard, I actually wanted to read this purport, because it's such a beautiful point that's mentioned on understanding this bodily identification and how we can come out of it. So if we can have, I think it was Arya who volunteered earlier. If Arya can read this purport.
Srila Narottama Das Thakur has sung Deha Smriti Nahiyara Samsara Bandhana Ka Hantara. One who is spiritually advanced has no connection with the body or with the bodily actions and reactions. When one comes to understand that he is not the body and therefore is neither fat nor skinny, one attains the topmost form of spiritual realization. When one is not spiritually realized, the bodily conception entangles one in the material world. At the present moment, all human society is laboring under the bodily conception. Therefore, in the Shastras, people in this age are referred to as Dvipadapashu, two-legged animals. No one can be happy in a civilization conducted by such animals. Our Krishna consciousness movement is trying to raise fallen human society to the status of spiritual understanding. It is not possible for everyone to become immediately self-realized like Jada Bharat. However, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 1-18, Nashta Prayeshva Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. By spreading the Bhagavata principles, we can raise human society to the platform of perfection. When one is not affected by the bodily conceptions, one can advance to the Lord's devotional service. Shall I read the verse as well?
You can read just the translation.
Okay. The more we advance our freedom from the bodily conception, the more we are fixed in devotional service, and the more we are happy and peaceful. In this regard, Srila Madhvacharya says that those who are too materially affected continue the bodily conception. Such persons are concerned with different bodily symptoms, whereas one freed from bodily conceptions lives without the body, even in the material condition.
Thank you. So yes, this is it. The principle of understanding that I'm not the body, I'm the spirit soul. Sometimes we say it so much that we forget what it means, but that's it. That is what spiritual life is about, at least at the start. And then when we go beyond that, we can understand that not just are we not we're the spirit soul, but the spirit soul is the servant of Krishna. This is a little exercise we can do, okay? You can get your fingers ready to type in the chat. I want you to write down problems that people face in this world in the chat. Okay, I will choose one or two devotees to, one or two of the things that they say, but I want you all to put in the chat now, what are things that we have as problems in the material world or that we consider problems? I'll give the first example myself. Amongst the young people, a big thing which is considered a problem is the looks, right? Because they need to try and attract the other person, the gender. So they want to make sure their looks are very important, and they cause lots of distress because of how they look. And this arises why? Because of the bodily identification. As soon as one realizes I'm a spirit soul, and there is no conception of bodily beauty or bodily being ugly, it doesn't make a difference, because anyway, the body is, the liquid beauty. It has no value in itself. It's just made of bile, stool, and mucus. Okay, so yeah, and not having size and shape of bodily parts, bhakti is similar to the point I was saying. Yeah, stress arises because of these things, the aforementioned points. I just heard my sister throwing a tantrum saying I did not say exactly what she said. I don't know if you heard that in your room as well.
I heard she was screaming.
Sorry, Bhakti, I thought it's the same principle that I had mentioned. Stress. So stress arises why? Because we try and manage the material things with our material change. And we'll see in the next verse that actually changing our material configuration doesn't make a difference. So it's also based off the bodily platform. Prestige, yeah, power, name, fame, and recognition. This is all on the bodily platform, right? I am master. I am the admin of this WhatsApp group. These small things people have and they consider to be so great. And this is all due to identification on the bodily platform, thinking that, yes, me, Sumedh, I am the greatest. This is all just bodily. There is no actual value there. So you can keep on doing this more and more, okay? What other problems people have, you'll come to the conclusion it's because of the identification with material things. Ego. Yeah, so Bhuvaneshwari Mataji put ego, very nice. Ego is that identification with the body. Because as soon as we identify with the body, we say, oh, I'm the enjoyer. And as soon as you realize, wait a minute, I'm not the body, I'm not the enjoyer. So sense gratification is not what I should do. That's where it opens. If we don't understand that we're not the body, I can do sense gratification because that's me. But when we realize I'm not the body, oh wait, I should not do. Meeting worldly expectations, society's expectations, when things do not happen to your expectations. Very nice points. So those two, I think, are quite easily seen, how they come from the bodily identification, the society expectation, worldly expectation. When things do not happen to our expectation, that's also because we think that changing the material things will create a difference. It doesn't make any difference. And we saw that just now, right? He said, if you chastise someone that is mad, what will it do? It's like beating a dead horse. By beating a dead horse, it's going to get up and start running a race? No, it's dead. So what do? When we are trying to change the material circumstances, we are doing the same thing. And anyway, I won't keep on going on to that because we can go on this point forever. But we need to understand how to come out of this. Nashta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya. By Bhagavat sevaya, nityam bhagavata sevaya. By serving the devotee Bhagavat, in other words, the Vaishnavas, and by serving the book Bhagavat, by studying it. These two things, we will come out of that bodily identification up till the spiritual realization. Okay. And these things they just continue, right? King and master today, but you could be my servant tomorrow and I could be your master. So these kind of things, they're all temporary. They don't continue. It's all completely on the bodily platform. And so making decision like that is incorrect. In that case, who is master, who is servant? Because the differentiation is temporary. And it expands only from usage or convention. It's not real. It's just something which we created as the society. And where is it? Here. So I wanted to show this one. No, not this one. Okay, 12. That the transformation of the material circumstance doesn't change anything because we're all servants of Maya, or we're all controlled by Maya. Here it is. If you can see this last sentence. Under the spell of material nature, we are becoming servants and masters. But if we agree to be controlled by the Supreme Personality of Godheads and his eternal servants, this temporary condition existed. So currently, we are under the control of the material nature. So no one is actually master. So instead, if we just accept that we are servants, and instead of being servants of Maya, we just serve Lord Krishna, this whole thing ceases. There's no problem. So in this way, he then also defeats the other points about, the madman being like a death force, there is no effect. A madman is punished, then he's not cured of the madness. When you try and change material things, material is still there, there's no problem. Just keep this in mind, okay? Material means problem. Spiritual means solution. That's the easiest summary of this understanding. We always talk about the example of the horse poo in 1950s America. They thought by creating the car, we will get rid of all this problem of horse manure that's on the streets because of horse and carriage. Then they created the car, and now we have pollution. Now we are creating electric cars, and we're losing rare earth metals. So we will keep on causing, our solution causes a problem because that's material solution. But spiritual solution will solve the problem. So that's what we should do. And then finally, after hearing this understanding of Atma Tattva, the science of soul, then Rahugana Maharaj has now come to his senses, and he now takes shelter of Jada Bharat. So if we can have someone from verses 16 to 20 to read how Rahugana now takes the shelter of Bharat Maharaj and begs for forgiveness.
Arya.
King Rahugana said, "O Brahmana, you appear to be moving in this world very much covered and unknown to others. Who are you? Are you a learned Brahmana and saintly person? I see that you're wearing a sacred thread. Are you one of those exalted, liberated saints, such as Dattatreya and other highly advanced learned scholars? May I ask whose disciple you are? Where do you live? Why have you come to this place? Is your mission in coming here to do good for us? Please let me know who you are." "My dear sir, I'm not at all afraid of the thunderbolt of King Indra, nor am I afraid of the serpentine piercing trident of Lord Shiva. I do not care about the punishment of Yamaraja, the superintendent of death, nor am I afraid of the fire, scorching sun, moon, wind, or the weapons of Kuvera. Yet I am afraid of offending a Brahmana. I am very much afraid of this. My dear sir, it appears that the influence of your great spiritual knowledge is hidden. Factually, you are bereft of all material association and fully absorbed in the thought of the Supreme. Consequently, you are unlimitedly advanced in spiritual knowledge. Please tell me why you are wandering around like a dullard. O great saintly person, you have spoken words approved by the yogic process, but it's not possible for us to understand what you have said. Therefore, kindly explain it. I consider your good self the most exalted master of mystic power. You know the spiritual science perfectly well. You are the most exalted of all learned sages, and you have descended for the benefit of all human society. You have come to give spiritual knowledge, and you are a direct representative of Kapiladeva, the incarnation of God, and the plenary portion of knowledge. I am therefore asking you, O spiritual master, what is the most secure shelter in this world? It is not a fact that your good self is the direct representative of Kapiladeva, the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. To examine people and see who is actually a human being and who is not, you have presented yourself to be a deaf and dumb person. Are you not moving this way upon the surface of the world? I am very attached to family life and worldly activities, and I am blind to spiritual knowledge. Nonetheless, I am now present before you, and I'm seeking enlightenment from you. How can I advance in spiritual life?
Thank you. So yes, now Rahugana Maharaj, after hearing the science of the soul, he comes to the real platform of intelligence, and he realizes what kind of offense I did to such a great personality. And so this verse is, if you don't remember any verse from this chapter, you should learn it actually. This is such a nice verse. Naham vishanke suraraja vajran natrayaksha shulana yamasya dhandat nagnarka somanila pita pashtrach chanke brisham brahma kulavamanat. This is a very, very beautiful verse. My dear sir, I am not at all afraid of the thunderbolt of King Indra, nor am I afraid of the serpentine, piercing trident of Lord Shiva. I do not care about the punishment of Yamaraj, the superintendent of death, nor am I afraid of fire, scorching sun, moon, wind, nor the weapons of Kuvera. Yet I am afraid of offending a Brahmana. I am very much afraid of this. The one thing that's actually dangerous is the offense of the great personalities. And Srila Prabhupada writes here, When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was instructing Rupa Goswami at the Shashwamedh Ghat in Prayag, he pointed out very clearly the seriousness of offending a Vaishnava. He compared the Vaishnava Pra to Hati Mata, a mad elephant. When a mad elephant enters a garden, it spoils all the fruits and flowers. Similarly, if one offends a Vaishnava, he spoils all his spiritual assets. If you look very deeply, the mercy of the Supreme Lord is completely lost as soon as one offends a Vaishnava. And therefore, there is no way of making spiritual advancement as soon as we offend a Vaishnava. And so, Maharaj Rahugana pleads for forgiveness here. Instantly, he comes back to the senses, and this is actually very amazing character of Rahugana Maharaj. He made a huge mistake. He doesn't sit there justifying himself. He could have easily said, "Sure, I'm the king." But he came to the senses and he realized, yes, this person is speaking absolute truth. I should completely take surrender unto him. And so instantly pleading for the forgiveness. And you can see this is the danger of the offending the Vaishnava. Thunderbolts of Indra, no problem. Tridents of Lord Shiva, no problem. Punishment of Yamaraj, no problem. Offending the Vaishnava, the great personality, is the greatest problem. So that's one thing that we should always avoid. And this is the most important lesson actually we will learn from this section here. As he pleads for mercy. He asks at this point, like, who are you? Are you a learned Brahmana? Which dynasty? Who is your guru? This is how we should test when we are understanding, not test, sorry. This is how we should inquire when we are understanding from the spiritual person, that they are giving us the authorized knowledge. And so you will see that to confirm that he's actually getting this perfect knowledge after coming to his senses, he just wants to check, who are you? What is your parampara? Can I guarantee I'm getting the right knowledge? And some people say, oh, no, I don't need guru for spiritual life. No. Spiritual life is a journey of self-discovery. So many of you may have heard this. Spiritual life is a journey of self-discovery. You figure out yourself. This is not our Vedic principle. Tad vijnanartam sagurumeva vigachet samit panishtrotriyam brahmanishtam. It is explained very clearly that one should approach a spiritual master, an authorized personality. And so the guru must provide that knowledge, and one must understand that knowledge from the authorized guru. Now, how can one know if they are the guru? Well, they have to prove that, right? And that proof of their spiritualness is shown through their parampara and their own character and practices. Do you have anything you want to add in this regard?
That's fine.
Okay. So yeah, the whole of this section is explaining just two principles. Number one is the importance of accepting the spiritual master. And number two is understanding the need of avoiding Vaishnava Parad to make progress in spiritual life. So in this way, he inquires, okay, oh, you're very close to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You're very dear to him. I am blind in spiritual knowledge. I don't have any of this, and I want to make spiritual advancement. And so if you look actually in all of these purports, Prabhupada quotes the same, Tad vijnanartam sagurumeva vigachet. Hey, he's also quoted, Tasmad gurum prapadyeta jignasu shreya uttamam shabdhe pare chanishnatam brahmanyupasamashrayam. That when you go to the guru, you should take shelter properly and you should inquire of the activities jignasu shreya uttamam. You don't ask the guru, how can I get more money? How can I get a nice wife? How can I get a nice husband? This is not what one does when they go to the guru. When one goes to guru, they should ask, Jignasu Shreya Uttamam, how can I advance in the spiritual life? And so we need a spiritual authority in order to progress in our spiritual life. And this is what Rahugana Maharaj is doing. He's asking the questions to that spiritual authority so that he can make progress. And at the same time, he's completely taking shelter because of his mistake of making Vaishnava Prad. And this is the way to rectify the mistake of Vaishnava Prad, by completely taking shelter of the Vaishnava and by taking the instructions of that Vaishnava. So that's the most important principles that we should really feel. And in this regard, 1958. Okay. In this regard, you see Dhruva Maharaj, he had Narad Muni. Prahlad Maharaj, he had Narad Muni. Vyasadev also had Narad Muni. All these great personalities, they also had Guru. So who are we to say we don't need a Guru? Janak Maharaj had a spiritual teacher. Bhishma Dev had a spiritual teacher. Why should we not have a spiritual master? Everyone that makes progress in spiritual life does so because they have the spiritual master. They're taking the shelter of the Vaishnavas and they are avoiding Vaishnava Parad. So for us, yes, we need to do Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya, but that doesn't mean just book Bhagavatam. That means also devotee Bhagavatam, the Guru, the Vaishnava. So if we take shelter of the spiritual teacher, we'll be able to make progress. And now we have the final section, which is verses 21 to 25, which is just explaining this principle. Okay, now that you've come to a spiritual master, you should inquire about the principles of the spiritual life. It's explained in Bhagavad Gita, Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya, pariprashna, asking the questions in an inquisitive mood of service rather than a challenging mood. And so this is what he's doing now. He didn't understand some of the responses to the arguments that was presented by Jada Bharat. So now he will ask in verses 21 to 25. Can we have some volunteer to read the translations for these 5 verses? Okay, Nana, you can make that decision. I don't want to offend any of the Vaishnavas here.
Shall I read? I'll
Uh,
spare you from any offenses.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, we can't
Somebody else
please
can
everyone.
if they want to. There's nobody who's saying anything.
Let's do it this way. Let's do it this way. To avoid Vaishnava Parad, Meena Mataji, can you read verse 21 and 22? Lakshman Prabhu, can you do 23 and 24? And Prem Bhakti Prabhu, can you do 25?
Oh, sweet.
Yes,
So
I've
next
avoided
one.
Vaishnava Parad. Jai.
Hari Om. So you have said, I am not fatigued from labor. Although the soul is different from the body, there is fatigue because of bodily labor, and it appears to be the fatigue of the soul. When you are carrying the palanquin, there is certainly labor for the soul. That is my conjecture. You have also said that the external behavior exhibited between the master and the servant is not factual. Although in the phenomenal world, it is not. Sorry. You have also said that the external behavior exhibited between the master and the servant is not factual. But although in the phenomenal world it is not factual, the product of the phenomenal world can actually affect things that is visible and experienced. As such, even though material activities are impermanent, they cannot be said to be untrue. Text 22. King Rahugana continued, My dear sir, you have said that designations like bodily fatness and thinness are not characteristics of the soul. That is incorrect because designations like pain and pleasure are certainly felt by the soul. You may put a pot of milk and rice within fire, and the milk and the rice are automatically heated one after the other. Similarly, due to bodily pains and pleasures, the senses, mind, and soul are affected. The soul cannot be completely detached from this conditioning. Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna. Lakshman Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Text 23. My dear sir, you have said that the relationship between king and the subject or between the master and the servant are not eternal. But although such relationships are temporary, when a person takes the position of a king, his duty is to rule the citizens and punish those who are disobedient to the laws. By punishing them, he teaches the citizens to obey the laws of the state. Again, you have said that punishing a person who is deaf and dumb, like chewing and chewed or grinding the pulp, that is to say, there is no benefit in it. However, if one is engaged in his own occupational duty as ordered by Supreme Lord, his sinful activities are certainly diminished. Therefore, if one is engaged in his occupational duty by force, he benefits because he can vanquish all his sinful activities in that way. Text 24. Whatever you have spoken appears to me to be contradictory. O best friend of the distressed, I have committed a great offense by insulting you. I was puffed up with false prestige due to the possessing the body of a king. For this, I have certainly become offended. Therefore, I pray that you kindly glance at me with your causeless mercy. If you do so, I can relieve from sinful activities brought about by insulting you. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Text 20.
And we always end with the topmost, Prema Bhakti.
Oh. Thank you, Ji Haripur. Text 25. Oh my dear Lord, you are the friend of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the friend of all living entities. You are therefore equal to everyone, and you are free from the bodily conception. Although I have committed an offense by insulting you, I know that there is no loss or gain for you due to my insult. You are fixed in your determination, but I have committed an offense. Because of this, even though I may be as strong as Lord Shiva, I shall be vanquished without delay due to my offense at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava. Very well.
Thank you so much, Prem Bhakti Prabhu. Thank you to all the devotees who read. So yes, now, after begging for forgiveness, in these verses, now he's asking questions about the philosophy. Okay, I'm not going to go into this philosophy too much, and I'll explain why, because these are questions that are asked. And you might be thinking, that's not fair. Don't worry. Jadabharat and conversation between Jadabharat and Maharaj Rahugana continues for another few more chapters. So I'm not going to cover everything here now. But this is the start of that discussion. I will give the points in very brief, because they are very complicated and actually very philosophical. In text 21 and 22, Raghugana Maharaj is asking, okay, you said the soul is completely different from the body, but why is it that I experience pain when the body is hurt? Or why is it I experience pleasure when the body gets pleasure? Yes, I might not get the best pleasure, and I might not feel the most indescribable pain, but I still feel that. Does that mean the body is completely false? And the answer to that, I can give you now, is the body is not false, it's just impermanent. It's material. So like Mayavadis say this world is not real, devotees say this world is real, but it's temporary. There's a fundamental difference there, but I can't cover that now. We'll cover that in the next chapter. Then in 23rd verse, he's saying that you're saying these relationships are temporary, but what about if you have duties? Like as a king, I have a duty to run the kingdom. So I do have, although temporary relationship, I have some duty there. How do I go about doing that? And after asking his questions, he then takes shelter again, because I have committed a great offense by insulting you. I was puffed up with false prestige due to possessing body of a king, so certainly I've become offender. Here it is as well. Because of this, even though I may be as strong as Lord Shiva, I shall be vanquished without delay due to my offense at the lotus feet of the Vaishnava. And that's the conclusion, okay? So we should accept the spiritual authority. Actually, you can read this, it's very nice. You can read this in your own time. But even if one is as strong as Lord Shiva, who carries a trident in his hand, one will nonetheless fall down from his spiritual position if he tries to insult a Vaishnava. The Vaishnava Parad is the worst thing that we can do, so we should be very careful to avoid it. So in conclusion, for this chapter, at the beginning, Maharaj Rahugana takes Jadabharat as one of the people to carry the palanquin. Jadabharat carries the palanquin in a very erratic manner because he's avoiding stepping on the ants due to his merciful nature as a Vaishnava. We talked about 2 points there. One was that the devotee carries out regardless of the stressful situation. And 2 was that the devotee is kind to all living entities. Okay, devotee does the right thing, regardless of the situation, and devotee is friendly to all living entities. After that, we then talked about the insult that Rahugana gave to Bharat Maharaj, Jadabharat, very challenging in a sarcastic and very provocative way. But because Maharaj, not Maharaj, I still think he's Bharat Maharaj, that's 2 lifetimes ago. Jadabharat, because he's a pure devotee, he did not get affected by this at all. And such is the character of the great devotee, he explained in a very nice way. What did he explain? He explained the science of the absolute truth, because he explained firstly, the absolute understanding is we are not the body, we are the soul. And so all of these arguments that he provided were all nonsense, because you're the soul, not the body. And we discussed at that time that as soon as you say body, you cause problems. As soon as you are material, there are problems. Material cannot be a solution. Material means problem. Bodily identification means problem. Spiritual means solution. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya means solution. Serving the devotee Bhagavat, the Vaishnava, serving the book Bhagavat, the reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the solution. So material means problem, spiritual means solution. This is what we understand from Jada Bharat. And the second thing that we understand from him is that you are not the body, you are the spirit soul. Okay, first 2 points that we covered. So welfare of all living entities, and devotee does the right thing regardless of distress. The second 2 points are, I'm not the body, I'm the spirit soul, and material means problem, spiritual means solution. Then finally, in the last section, we learn another 2 points, which is that we should always avoid Vaishnava Aparadh. We should do everything we can to avoid Vaishnava Aparadh. It's the one thing that damages our spiritual life more than anything else, and there is no recovering from it unless we beg for forgiveness of the Vaishnava. And the second thing is, we need to accept a guru. Without guru, there is no spiritual life. Okay, so without the guru, there is no spiritual life, and we should inquire from the spiritual masters, the spiritual authorities, the spiritual teachers, how we can make progress through clarifying our doubts in that way. So this is it, 6 points from the whole session. Okay, 2 from the first section, 2 from the second section, and then 2 from the final sections. Let's quickly run through those 6 points. I just want to, I'll stop sharing my screen actually. Yeah. Oh, you're already going. The first 2 is that Bharat Maharaj, jumping over the ants, kind to all living entities, a devotee is kind to all living entities. And the second point is that a devotee does the right thing regardless of the distressful situation. In the second section, we understood the science of body and soul, and the 2 points we learned were, I am not the body, I am the spirit soul. And material means problem, spiritual means solution. In the final sections, we learned that Vaishnava Aparadh is to be avoided as much, like that's it. You cannot do Vaishnava Aparadh, it must be avoided. There is no room for Vaishnava Aparadh in spiritual life. It damages one's spiritual life, it destroys all of one's spiritual life. It's the mad elephant offense. Vaishnava Aparadh should be avoided. And the final thing, the 6th point was, we need a guru. We need a bona fide authorized guru that we should take shelter of to make progress. Without the guru, it's very difficult to make progress. And as per the Vedic understanding, we cannot factually make progress without the guru. There we go.
Excellent. So thank you, Sundar Chaitanya. I really actually admire King Rahugana. As soon as he realized, he immediately came down and offered obeisances, begged forgiveness, and trying to rectify the situation. This is a character of a sane man. When a sane man makes a mistakes, when he comes to know, he doesn't, he's ready to offer full apology. Repent and not repeat. Is ready to regret and repent and apologize. So this is a symptom of sane man. Insane man is completely different. They, even though they knew, later they come to know they made mistake, but they never try to correct. And there is no regret, and they justify their own actions. King Rahugana not justifying his own actions, right? He's wholeheartedly apologizing it. I really like the character of Rahugana. I see this problem as part of the administrator. I see many people, they make mistake and then they never accept. They never accept and they blame others. Even though they make mistake, there is a problem with them, they blame others. So having seen so many people, reading this story of Rahugana, I was discussing earlier with Sundar Chaitanya, what an amazing character of Rahugana. He was a great soul, amazing personality. So those are my final thoughts. Thank you very much, Padma Mataji, for your wonderful service of reminding. And we had today 18 people. What a nice number. Lakshman Prabhu, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, it's Rosie. So just I got a small question. So Jada Bharat, he never responded to anyone. What made him to respond to Rahugana king?
Yes, Sundar Chaitanya, it's your session anyway, so I've just shared my thought.
No, this is one of the questions I was expecting. I was hoping someone will ask this question. The reason why is because Rahugana Maharaj had a sincere character. This is explained in the commentaries of the Acharyas that the brothers of Jada Bharat, they did not have sincere character. Yes, they carried out all the rituals, didn't have good character. The dacoits, they made their own religious principles for their own enjoyment. They didn't have sincere character. They were just doing, like they were ready to kill someone just so that they can become happy. They also don't have a sincere character. But Rahugana Maharaj, although material, he's sincere. And so the sincere person will always be fine in the spiritual life. Because even if they make a problem, fine, they will make progress to come out of that problem. But the insincere, ungrateful person with the improper attitude, no matter how much sadhana, no matter how much tapasya, no matter how much this or that, will not make progress because they will offend Vaishnavas continuously. They won't take the feedback. They will continue to do their own thing. And so that's the reason that Rahugana Maharaj was able to hear from Jada Bharat, whereas no one else was, because he had the sincere character.
Also,
Prabhuji,
my realization. Okay.
Sorry.
Let me finish this. My realization is that King Rahugana must have been a very good devotee in the past life, and there was some correction needed in this life for him to advance further, and that was brought, that was arranged by the Lord through the association of Jada Bharat. Yes. That's one point. And secondly, because he was a king, if he could preach to king, if king becomes a devotee, then an entire population becomes, he can teach. Entire population will be affected, influenced. He can influence the entire population. So there are two things that I said. One, in the past life, he must have been a devotee. There was some correction, something, some association required for him to progress further. And secondly, because he was a king and he can influence so many people. So if he becomes a devotee, he can make many others into devotees. Bhuneshwari Mataji, were you trying to say something?
It's okay, Prabhuji. I was going to say a leader will lead the people. So
yeah,
you
okay,
just covered it. Thank you.
We are on the same page. Yad yad acharato shreshta tat tat tevataro jana sayat pramanam krute lokoyam tat anuvartate. Whatever the example is set by the leader, the subjects will follow.
We actually discussed this in the last session. Aryan Prabhu asked, why did Jada Bharat not preach? And we talked about this point, that he only has to influence the one person who's the leader and their preaching is done.
Yes. Arya.
This is just like a comment, not a question, but
okay.
I like the point of how Jada Bharat, he continued with his service, devotional service, even at the hands of a King Rahugana. And like you said as well, the example of Prabhupada, so many obstacles he faced, but he continued. It reminded me of the story of Krishna and Uddhava when they went to collect logs for their spiritual master, and it started raining. So in one arm they had logs, and the other arm they held each other's hand. And the rain is like the obstacles. And so in one arm, like in life, in one arm you should carry the instructions of the spiritual master, and in the other arm the association of the people around you, the Vaishnavas, the saintly people, also your relationships with everyone around you, because that's also important. And despite the rain, they carried on with that. Just reminded me of that.
Yeah, it was just a small correction. It was Sudhama and Krishna, not Uddhava.
Sorry, yeah, not Uddhava.
Yeah, wonderful example. Yeah, so yeah, that point I really liked when we were discussing, how Prabhupada makes that even in a distressful condition, he doesn't forget his duty as a devotee, and that's a wonderful, wonderful example. And thank you for that wonderful comment, Arya. So we'll stop here. Thank you, everyone. And Krishna willing, we shall see you all next Thursday and continue the discussion, between Rahugana and Jadabharat. There are a few chapters we'll have to go through.
It's
and
super philosophical.
yeah, but one thing take-home message was also, please remember that how we should not offend devotees. That's the point that we have to learn from King Rahugana. And in case if we make some offense, we should ready to offer all apologies and we should beg forgiveness, just like he did it. Okay, avoid.
Yeah,
Okay.
Vaishnava Aparadha to be avoided. Guru, bona fide guru required. I was just making some jottings earlier prior
Okay.
to this.
So can you
If anyone
post
wants,
them?
yeah,
can
if
post
anyone
them
wants,
in
you
the
can
group?
screenshot or I will put it in the group later.
Yeah, group would be good. Okay. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grandhara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Nithai Gaura Premanandi, Hari Hari
Hari Hari
Bol.
Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you very much.
Prabhuji. Thank you,
Hare
Junior
Krishna.
Senior Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.